ça?
Yeah.
C'est comme ça. J'en place ici, président, John est ici. D'accord. Ok. Le maillot pour la fin. D'accord. I have for you. But at the end.
Okay.
Yeah. Allez. Est-ce qu'il est 16 heures? Oui, c'est bon. Bien, bonjour à toutes et à tous.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Un immense plaisir que
I am really pleased
expliquer ce que nous avons fait ces dernières
to
semaines.
explain you what we've done over the last few
Évidemment,
weeks.
vous présenter John.
And I'm going to
John.
introduce John to you.
We are very happy. And donc pour essayer de résumer un petit peu les choses, on va
And just
se
to try and
répartir
be
la tâche
and
avec
summarize a little
John,
bit, we're going to
évidemment. Il vous
split
parlera
the
de
work
lui,
between John and myself. He's going to talk about
ses ambitions.
himself and his
Where
ambitions.
is, le casque for John. Il comprend pas encore mon français, donc.
My mother would be very unhappy that I need this because she wants me to let you all know before you make fun of the American that she is French.
C'est double tradition.
Thank you.
Ça marche?
Just a
When the president speaks in French, you have the tradition in English.
Okay, great, thanks.
Voilà, donc c'est un grand jour pour l'institution.
So as I was saying, it's a great day for the institution, as you can
Un
imagine.
grand jour pour
It's
bien
a
sûr
great day
l'institution en tant que telle, mais aussi
for
pour
our institution as
tous les gens
such,
qui
but
la
also for all the
composent.
people that are part of this institution.
Évidemment du comité de direction,
I
des
mean,
administrateurs. Merci
board of
à
directors, all the
se dégager
trustees,
aujourd'hui pour venir à
and
cette
thanks
conférence.
to you all
Mais
if
aussi
you've been
le
able to
COMEX,
make yourselves
mais aussi,
available. Also
des
the executive
représentants des fans
committee,
qui sont là.
all the
Donc,
fans
dire à
representatives.
John, parce qu'on en a souvent
And I'd
parlé,
like to tell John, because we've talked
la
about that
relation
a
qui
lot,
s'est instaurée depuis
that there's
1987 avec,
this relationship that has been created since 1987 with the fans groups, and of course we're going to explain you how it works in the future, and we also have the intention to carry on with this collaboration, crucial collaboration, and John will give you his take on this, which is a very accurate vision of things in the relationships with supporters. And I'd like to mention also Thierry Sauvage, who's worked a lot on this project with his steering committee, and I am really happy that everyone is part of this. So of course there are journalists that are very numerous today, and they will be able to answer and to ask all the questions, the possible questions. There are people from the bank world and the finance world, because we, as you probably know, Olympique Lyonnais is part of the stock exchange market, and we'll describe all the operations that are related to what we are entitled to doing, what we should do in that kind of operations, which is a very important one, economic, from an economic point of view.
Alors, juste pour faire un petit peu l'historique.
So, just to give you a little bit of a summary
vous le savez, nous
and
avons
go
un
straight
certain
to the
nombre
point, as you probably know, we have a certain number of shareholders that wished to withdraw themselves, but in IDG, and through this American business bank have opened the game to transfer or to divest. And the third shareholder that we've got in terms of size, Holneston is its president, myself. We've wanted to find the right and the best suited solution for those who were withdrawing and for those who were staying.
Donc l'opération a été un
So
grand
this
succès au-delà de
operation has
nos
been
plans, c'est pour ça que
really
c'était
successful and
prévu,
went way
parce
beyond
qu'on a eu en fait
our hopes,
alors,
and
je
that's
sais
why
plus
it's
si
been
c'est 5 ou 6
probably
groupes
longer than
qui sont
expected, and
intéressés
because I
à
think that
ces
5 or
opérations.
6 groups
Il y a
were
eu
interested in
un
this
certain nombre
operation.
de groupes qui
A
n'ont
certain
pas
number
été
of
retenus parce qu'ils
groups
correspondaient
were not
pas à ce que
selected
nous
because they didn't
souhaitions,
meet
parce
with the
qu'ils
requirements that
ne
we had,
respectaient pas les engagements que nous
or
avions décrits très
because they
précisément.
wouldn't comply with the commitments
donc,
that we required.
Au gré des 3 mois
And
qui se sont déroulés pendant cette
over the last
consultation,
3
eh bien,
months
nous avons
of
pu
consultations
bien
that we've
connaître
had,
l'ensemble des gens qui
we've
participaient
been
à
able
ce
to get
souhait
to know all the
venir
participants,
travailler
all the people
au
who
sein de l'Olympique Lyonnais.
wanted to work for,
Et nous avons
and
donc
together with
rencontré John à
the
ce
Olympique
moment-là,
Lyonnais, that's when we met
qui
John,
coche toutes les cases.
who really ticks all
Que
the
nous
boxes.
avons choisi. Bon, j'ai lu de ci de là que
And I've
ça
read
avait été
here
plus
and there
compliqué que ça
than
l'est
it
dans la
had been
réalité. Bon, depuis le début,
more complicated than it
John a
was
souhaité
in
s'investir
reality, but since the
dans l'Olympique
beginning,
Lyonnais,
John has
en
wanted to
ayant, il le
commit
rappellera tout à
himself
l'heure, une
in
collaboration
Olympique Lyonnais
permanente
by
avec l'équipe de direction
creating
et
this
avec
permanent
moi-même.
cooperation with the executive,
voilà, donc il
the
a
board of
fallu un petit peu
directors,
de temps parce que c'est
and
une
myself.
affaire importante
And of course, it
qui
required
suppose
a little bit
un
of
certain
time,
nombre de préalables.
and there
Je voudrais
are
remercier aussi
prerequisites for that.
comité ad hoc qui
And
a
I'd like
participé
to
pour le compte du
thank
conseil
the
d'administration à
ad hoc
toutes les négociations.
committee
Je vois qu'il y a
that
Sidonie
participated
Mérieux
in
qui est
all
là. Merci,
the
Sidonie,
negotiations. There's also Sidonie Mérieux, who's here
l'efficacité, la
today. Thank you very much for your
disponibilité, et puis, le président du
efficiency
comité
and
ad
your
hoc qui est
availability, and
devant
also the
son
president
écran, sur YouTube.
who's watching us on
Gilbert
YouTube right
Saladin,
now, Gilbert
qui,
Saladin.
Au gré de ce que nous discutions, on était au Brésil, du moins je devais être au
Our
Brésil avec Vincent
conversations, and I
et
should have been in
Gilbert,
Brazil with Vincent
la
and
semaine
Gilbert
dernière, donc je
last
suis
week,
resté.
but I
Bon, et
stayed.
vous le savez, John vous
And
l'exprimera.
you probably know it, and
Il
John
est
will tell you
aussi
about this,
propriétaire du
about
club
that.
de
He's
Botafogo.
also the owner
Et donc,
of
voilà,
Botafogo
donc les relations
Football Club,
n'ont cessé de se développer
and of
au gré
course,
des
our
rencontres
relationships
avec les uns et
have
avec les autres.
developed by
Alors, les
meeting
points qui
one
nous
another.
ont
So,
rapprochés et qui font
what
qu'aujourd'hui
got us to work
on peut
together?
exprimer cet accord.
What are our
Le
similarities
premier point, c'était,
for that
bon,
agreement
je le dis
that
d'autant
we
plus volontiers que
we
les
are
groupes de supporters sont là,
creating
mettre
and signing? And
le
I'm saying
football
this also because
au
there are
cœur de
supporter
notre
groups
développement
here.
futur.
It's really to place football at the heart
Retrouver,
of what we're going to
l'ambition nous a
do
jamais
and develop
manqué,
in the
mais
future.
il nous a manqué
Find
un certain nombre de résultats les dernières, donc, faire en sorte de retrouver tant sur le
find
plan
our
national que sur le
ambition.
plan
It's not that we
européen,
lacked ambition, but
l'ambition
we
pour
need to really
toutes les équipes,
find it
les
in
équipes
order for us to
féminines,
be driven
mais aussi,
forward
évidemment,
at
pour
French,
les équipes
at national,
masculines.
European level for
Le deuxième point qu'il fallait,
men and
la
women.
deuxième ligne qu'il fallait cocher dans le petit diagramme.
And then
que
the
nous
second
avions,
line that
c'était
we
faire
needed
une offre qui
to, or the
corresponde
box that we
aux
needed
vendeurs.
to tick, it was
Donc,
to
ça a
create
été
or
le
to
cas.
make an offer that
Et donc,
corresponded to
John
the seller, and that was
va
the case.
reprendre l'ensemble
And John is going
des
to take
actions
over
des
all the
deux
shares
vendeurs.
of both
Personnellement, je
the
participerai
sellers,
aussi,
and personally,
de
I
manière
will participate,
partielle à ce rachat d'actions,
partially participate
qui va
to this.
permettre à John de
To the
devenir
fact
très
that
largement majoritaire,
taking
peut-être même
over
un jour
these
complètement
shares, and so he will.
Le troisième
John will,
point, c'était,
become,
et ça avait été fixé par le
one of the,
comité ad hoc et le conseil d'administration, répondre aux aspirations
majority
d'ambition que
shareholder
nous
maybe
avions,
in
et donc
the future.
pouvoir souscrire à une augmentation de capital de
And so we also
86
wanted to
millions
increase our
d'euros.
capital by
Alors, elle sera
86
consacrée,
million
en
euros.
partie, au recrutement. Bon,
This will be
Vincent,
dedicated to
qui est
recruitment,
là,
partly, and Vincent, who's
Bruno
here,
Chéroux,
and also
qui
Bruno
travaille,
Chéroux
on a
are
déjà bien
working
avancé, vous le savez, donc,
on this, and
ça
we've
viendra en plus de ce que nous
developed
souhaitions
this
consacrer
quite a lot, and this will be an
cette
extra.
opération.
It will come as
C'est
an
un
extra.
investissement que nous souhaitons réaliser pour
It's
renforcer
related to the
très
investment that
largement
we
les
are
équipes.
making in order to
Et
strengthen
vous savez,
our
un certain nombre
teams, and as
d'opérations
you
qui ont
probably
été
know,
faites,
some
on revient pas sur
operations have been made, and I'm not going to
le retour,
come back to this on the
d'Alexandre
return
Lacazette.
of
John nous disait tout à
Alexandre
l'heure que
Lacazette. John
ses
was telling me
enfants,
earlier that
étaient des
his
fans
children were huge
d'Alex,
fans
jusqu'au
of
jour où il a
Alex's
marqué un but contre
until
Crystal
he
Palace.
scored
Donc, ça
against
avait,
Crystal Palace.
peut-être, voilà, un peu,
October 18th.
exactly.
Well, he's now my favorite player again, but on that day, not quite.
Mais il est très content qu'Alex revienne parmi nous.
And so John is very
Il y
happy
aura un
that
certain
Alex
nombre
is
d'autres
back
nouvelles. On n'est pas là pour
with us.
expliquer tout ça, mais
Well, we're not here to
on va être
explain all of this,
ambitieux,
but
on
anyway,
l'était déjà avant
we
et
are
on va
really
être encore
ambitious.
plus,
We were
avec
ambitious in the ambitious in the past, and we will be even more
Le
ambitious
quatrième,
with John on our side.
objectif,
The fourth
c'était de faire en sorte qu'on
objective was
s'inscrive
to
dans bien sûr le départ des deux actionnaires sortants, mais
also
aussi dans une relation
try
avec ce qui a fait
and help and support our shareholders to withdraw and also to really maintain our successful OL group. And so myself and the board of directors,
là aussi depuis le début,
we wanted to support these operations. And John will repeat that probably later on. He wanted me to stay, and this was not an absolute obligation, of course. But as we've understood it, this was a wish from the fans and also from all the people that participate in this operation with DNCG, with the league, and also from the inside in terms of staff and the executive teams and the board of directors, I hope.
Voilà, donc ce quadruple objectif
this
était atteint et il fallait aussi
four-layer objective was
de John
reached, and with this with the group, the Eagle Group, and he will tell you a little bit more about this. So we need to really fit in and be able to communicate and really create momentum and
d'une projection qui est une projection
project ourselves onto the future in a strategic way. So there are sovereign funds that are coming in to football. Sometimes they're not always adequate with what we can do. And so we've got this idea with John, and he'll explain that to you. We'd like to be as efficient without belonging to sovereign funds.
Voilà, tout ceci dans évidemment des discussions.
Of course, we've debated upon things, we've discussed things, and you've probably seen that in the press release. The company was assessed at a level of 798 million euros and 834 after AK. So this shows that what has been built over the last 35 years, and which was the basis of what we've wanted to build with efficient results, is something that is appreciated by the investors and, more globally speaking, by the world of football. And so with this perspective and with our infrastructures, with the 70 titles that we've won since 1987, you know, with in football, with the academy, but also with our boys, our men, and so you've probably seen that on TF1, the French TV channel on Sunday. And we've talked about that with our trustees, and so this makes us want to share this joy in the future with John. In terms of agenda, it's really clear. We've agreed with John between Saturday and Sunday. It must have been the 20th night that I had spent negotiating, not only with John, but with many other participants. We sealed the deal. We shook hands remotely at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so between Sunday and Monday, we had agreed, and everything was signed. So thanks very much, John, for your trust. And so we agreed with we approved that with the board of directors, then the ad hoc committee. And today we're in this press conference, with you, and then we'll hold the General Assembly to talk about the capital increase on the 29th of July. So you're seeing that things are going quite fast. I'm really happy about this conclusion, really happy that John is here with us. He jumped on a plane and he will go back to Botafogo tomorrow, and he confessed that to me. He will receive the keys of the city of Rio for the work that he's put it on with Botafogo in Rio. So it really shows the admiration that the fans have for him, but also for the good work that has been put on. So I'm really happy about this conclusion. I'm going to give him the floor, and we'll answer your questions after that. Thanks to all of those who contributed inside the committee, the board of directors, the ad hoc committee, and all my friends who supported me and helped me in this incredible adventure. So thank you very much once again, and I'm going to give the floor to John, who's going to start by introducing himself and give you his vision of football.
Thank you very much. Just to ask, I guess if I speak in English, other people have the headsets? Or should I wait for translation?
Oui, tout à fait.
Okay.
Exactement.
Great. Anyway.
Ceux qui n'ont pas de casque sont ceux qui parlent anglais.
So those who don't have a headset speak English.
My mother would be embarrassed. I do read French very well, and I think over the next year, much of it will come back. So, yeah, I guess there are a number of things I'd like to talk about. Certainly, one in this situation would anticipate a lot of the questions the fans would have. You know, they try and take the measure of a person or a situation based on what they read, not only about that individual, but other things that are happening across, in this case, the world of sport. Multi-club groups, investors, American investors, super leagues. You know, these are a lot of the topics that are on everyone's mind these days. But before I get to that, I do want to really kind of explain why I'm here. And, you know, I really do have a sincere love of the sport of football. I've never called myself an investor. When that word comes up, I just, you know, feel strange. Of the situations that I've been involved in my life, I've been lucky to be a builder of small companies. Sometimes those companies have become bigger companies. I've always considered myself a builder of technologies, applications. I like to think what consumers and people are going to be doing and thinking in the future. I think in the technology business, if you're not thinking 5 to 10 years ahead, you're already behind. So I guess along the way, sometimes when you're building a company, it does require capital, and then you get this tag, you're an investor, and before you know it, everybody's convinced they know who you are. So I'd like to tell you a bit who I am. I think we're defined by our failures. People like to define themselves only by their successes. They like to talk about the size of the fish they caught, or the golf game they had, or how much money they made in a deal. But ultimately, as you go through life, you have these moments, and it's the failures that cause you to reset and really think about who you are and what you like to do in life. I had one of those failures back in 2011, 2012. I've always been a big lover of community-oriented projects, and I had a company. I said, it's not just about making money. We're going to help a town. We're going to help people. We're going to train people. And it didn't go as well as it should have. The part of it that was going very well was the community part. The business was going very well. The problem is I had a lot of Wall Street money in the deal, and while the company was growing, it was more valuable in a different construct. So it was divided up, and it was sold in different pieces around the world very successfully as it moved to China. And I was still left with these community projects I started. Much of them were about youth development and education. I had started a football academy. I was training dozens and dozens of kids to play better football. But really what that program was about is helping kids use their football to get into better situations out of bad neighborhoods or difficult family environments and get into university. So when the business failed, these projects had to continue, and my career seemed like it was ending, and I had to rebuild myself. It takes a while to figure out what you're going to do next when something you're working on changes so abruptly. So I found myself designing software, thinking about the future of animation, environmental, visual effects, virtual reality, digital humans, things that I was good at. And I had to figure out which one of those projects it would help me get my family back on track. So I was driving the bus. I was taking kids to soccer events. I was washing their laundry because 17-year-old boys don't know how to wash their own uniforms. I was taking them to tournaments, getting them into college, while I was writing a business plan for the relaunch of a technology business. I had fun doing that. I'd watch 200 games a year. All of the fake friends left when success left, when wealth went away. But these kids in this program, many of them my friends today, a couple of them have become professionals, but more importantly, dozens of them have gone on to great academic careers and now jobs as adults. So when success came back and the fake friends came back, I decided I wanted to stay in football. I'd learned a great deal about myself, what I wanted for my family, what I wanted to do. And then success came back, I think, surprisingly well, at a scale greater than what I had lost before. And so I think I committed even more to some of the projects that I thought were important. So if you're going to then be an investor, because that's happened to you, and you have capital, I started to put it into football. At Crystal Palace, I'm a minority investor. I think that's a really interesting analogy to what's happening here. Crystal Palace is obviously a terrifically positioned football club in London, and a tremendous league, the Premier League. Has a strong chairman, Steve Parish, who's saved that club many years ago when it was going through difficult times. And I think a lot of people wondered, well, what would happen when I became involved there? Well, look at what's happened. You know, I brought resources, I brought help, but I'm not running the club. Steve Parish is running the club. He's doing as good of a job now as he was doing when he saved the club 10 years ago. And so I brought some capital and I brought some enthusiasm, and of the 50 or so times that I've been to Crystal Palace, I've been to the first team training facility 5 times. I've been to the academy 40 times. So that really tells you what my interests are. I love the youth development side of this sport, not only athletically, but I love the creation of programs like Steve has built at Crystal Palace, where when the kids find out they're not going to be professionals, or maybe they're not ready for the first team, that you transition them into life. So I know we're not here to talk about that part of the game, but I've heard some questions about, well, why did you show up here? Why are you here? Well, that's how I got here. At Crystal Palace, they've built a remarkable academy in South London. The faces and the accents and the subcultures that represent the families in the academy look very much like they do here. Immigration from Africa, West Africa, into South London, similar immigration that you have from that part of the world, French-speaking countries in Africa that end up at Lyon. So I saw a lot of parallels. Here with Jean-Michel, we have a very strong chairman and CEO. He's done an amazing job. This is like the nicest room I think I've been in a press conference in my life. You know, the facilities, the academy, football, basketball, men's, women's football or soccer is huge in the United States. And, you know, they look to Lyon as the best women's team in the world. So I think expect in me to see the same type of thing that Palace fans have not seen at Crystal Palace. They haven't seen me running the club, grabbing the mic. They do see me jump up out of my chair when the team scores goals, when many of the people in suits in England don't jump as high as Americans do when the ball goes into the back of the net. But I expect the same. You know, I'm here as a resource. Unfortunately, football is very much about money. We are bringing more capital. I've always been very good at organizing capital, investing it directly. Historically, Eagle football is just me. The investment in Crystal Palace, Botafogo, Molenbeek in Belgium. Thus far, it's just been my capital personally. For this project, I've been joined by one very long-standing partner, Jamie Salter, chairman of Authentic Brands Group. We've been partners in various things for 25 years. We're great friends. Along the way, you know, he owns Reebok and Don't worry, Reebok's not coming for Adidas here. But he owns Sports Illustrated. He owns the rights to Marilyn Monroe, which is odd. Incredible brands over the years. So he's a great partner, great energy, great ideas. Bill Foley, a newer partner. Come to know him as just an incredibly kind, nice man. He owns a number of hockey clubs in the United States. He's a legendary investor and a good friend to a lot of companies. So as we've gotten a little bigger at Eagle Football, I've brought these two partners in to sort of strengthen kind of my efforts as I go forward. So from a capital perspective, we would all be considered lead investors of what we're doing going forward. From an energy perspective, expect me to be trolling around the academies here at Lyon, enjoying getting to know this club, not only the football, but the basketball. I think that Olympique Lyonnais represents everything I would love, all of the clubs in which you have an interest, love them to strive to become. It's got incredible balance, not only in sport, but in entertainment. The facilities here not only drive football, but also the arena that's coming online in 2023 is spectacular. So this club is sports, it's entertainment, it's football, it's basketball, it's men, it's women's, powerfully women's. It's a brand that has already stretched beyond its borders. I see great clubs in different parts of the world as I've been considering investments in different clubs in Portugal that are just absolutely spectacular that stay largely within Portugal, as do many of the businesses within Portugal. But Olympique Lyonnais has already stretched its wings. It's got a women's team in the United States. It's got a brand that's known everywhere, and it's one of the 20th biggest clubs in the world. So why would I show up and want to change any of that? So I think that is why it was so important for me to come into a situation where I didn't have the pressure of running anything. I'm not, I'd say I'm probably a lousy CEO if I'm ever a CEO. That's why I'm not a CEO. And I think I'm a resource to this club, and I think the fans over time will see me as somebody that really likes to help, and both short-term and long-term ways. Quick a bit on the philosophy, I guess, that I bring to the equation. I do think football's sort of broken by money. I don't say that in like a political way. It's just a reality. You've got leagues in different parts of the world where there are 3 strong teams, 2 strong teams, and there's everybody else. You've got long seasons where the result is known far in advance, like which of the top 3 teams is going to win this year. What fun is that? You've got clubs that are owned by oligarchs, increasingly less, as we speak, but state-owned clubs. And they work very hard to sort of protect that capital advantage, and financial fair play rules are created in such a way that that advantage is protected. But I still think it's a really simple game. I think money is important. We're going to show up and we're going to spend. We have to. I can complain about the way the system works, but we can't change it overnight. But what I do love about football, at its best, it's community-driven. These great leagues and these clubs and these small towns and these people that root for teams they shouldn't because it's their team. And in the Premier League back in 2015 when Leicester City won, or other countries and other leagues, similar examples, when these teams come out of nowhere and they rise up and they win a championship, I would really love us to get back to that across the world of football. I can't as one person change that. There's just too much working in the current direction. But what I like about Eagle Football and our strategy is that we are attempting to create a family of highly collaborative top-tier clubs that work together in identifying and developing a global footprint of talent identification. In Europe, I think you see this market is very efficient. Every kid that can juggle a ball is identified by age 9 and 10 and 12, and they already have people coming after them and signing them, and you're going to be the next great thing. everybody that can play is already identified. You can go to the United States right now, and there are literally thousands upon thousands of kids who have become adults that have never been brought into the system. Their immigration status might be speculative. They can't get financial aid to get into university. They can't legally play for their national team. Therefore, they can't get into the system. The best American players do not play for the U.S. national team, and I say that without commenting on any particular spectacular player that's currently on the U.S. team, but I mean that more generally. Thousands upon thousands of kids in the U.S. and South America and other parts of the world that are not as picked over as they are here. So I think maybe the solution to this money problem we have in sport, it's a combination. One, it is what it is. We have to bring more capital to the equation. But two, if we can find 11 players in this world that are better than the players you can buy, we can beat you. And to partner with a team like Olympique Lyonnais, it's, my goodness, I mean, they're already there, right? This is a club that knows what it's like to win in Europe. It's not like we have to bring this club back from the ashes. This is an incredible club. So partnering with the other clubs we have in our system, the relationships that we developed all over the globe, it was important to me that Jean-Michel really understood Brazil and the United States. I saw in Jean-Michel a person that already agreed with a lot of these principles, a combination of not just capital, but really, really good decision-making in global football. So the multi-club thing, if I can address that, I don't like it either. It just doesn't look right. You see big clubs that are looking at smaller clubs as some kind of strategic advantage, and I think our perspective is a little different. Every community deserves to dream to win a championship. Every community needs to know that that's the goal of the people running that club. Not only the people in front at the lectern, but the people behind in decision-making. And I think that's what our fans know at Eagle Football, is no one club or community should ever be considered a feeder for another. So we're looking to build a family, an ecosystem, and I think we're probably going to stop right about where we are, maybe with one other minority investment possibly. An ecosystem of top-tier clubs that really work together as they see fit, not forced by kind of the parent company to collaborate where collaboration may be unnecessary. Organically, our fans get it. There's a really cool thing that happened when we bought into Botafogo. It's entirely disconnected from my minority investment in Crystal Palace, but the fans in Brazil started reaching out to the fans in London. They started drawing up graphics and T-shirts and artwork and calling each other brother, and they're not competing with each other. They're in different parts of the world. So what could be bad about that? I mean, isn't that what we said about football? It brings the world together. So social media is so powerful that the marketing departments of these respective teams, not once have they ever pushed anything out to try and say, hey, fans in Brazil, please, here's the phone number of our fans in London. Give them a call. Like, you know, they get there through Twitter and Instagram, and now I'm seeing Crystal Palace jerseys on the backs of people walking into Nilton Santos Stadium in Rio. I'm seeing Botafogo jerseys in pubs in London, and they're calling each other brother and family member, and now they're calling in just the last 24 hours, Olympique Lyonnais, the big brother. So whether that happens naturally and that relationship develops, I think it's really cool. It's nothing you force, it just happens. I think the fans know this is a good idea. We are not a multi-club architecture that wants to build a feeder system for any one club. We just are a group of people that love football. We think it's community-born and community-driven, and it always will be. And we think through collaboration, that's a method of competitiveness which I think can overpower even money. So we'll see.
Thank you, John. C'est une vraie profession de foi qui vient après
Well,
l'explication.
thank you, John. I think that was a real pledge that you've made here. I think it was a good thing for John to express himself on his resources, on his mind, and also speak his heart. And that was the objective of this first part of the presentation. So now if you've got questions for John and for myself, please go ahead. You can do it both in English or in French. There's simultaneous interpreting for those of you who need it.
Voilà. Question.
I'm afraid the question is off microphone. The interpreter could not interpret.
Said the question was off microphone, so they couldn't interpret.
Any changes in the organization in the short term, medium term?
Can't hear the question, I'm sorry.
I'd like somebody to find me seats in the stadium, and I would like to know that's going to happen right away. No, there won't be. There will be a change to the board of directors. As you know, our group will have seats on the board, and Jean-Michel's selections as well. We've also made accommodations. Generally corporations, have boards of 7 or 9. Corporations like this that have a significant community element, I think we'll invite a good number of observers to continue to keep people that have been involved with the club kind of in the room and in the boardroom as we're making decisions. So we'd like that to still feel very open. Absolutely no changes in management and none contemplated.
No, it's okay.
Bonjour, Hervé Penaud, journal de l'équipe.
Hello, I'm Hervé Penaud in L'Équipe. So you're saying there won't be changes? It's quite rare when you invest so much money. So what will be the relationship between yourself and Jean-Michel Aulas, and will he still have the same decision-making power as he has now?
Yeah, actually we did something unique. Typically when a majority owner comes in, the board reflects that majority. The CEO has a certain amount of autonomy, but many of the decisions are made at the board. But because we both understand what a football organization needs, especially when you get into identifying and acting on talent and having to do so very quickly, these compressed windows of professional signings, player signings, create unique challenges for a football club that you don't have in a normal company. So we both thought it was a good idea that we create some really big kind of areas of latitude. Of course, there's going to be a budget, like any company has a budget, but he has great autonomy to even go beyond that budget in key items such as capital expenditures and player expenses, and very, very big thresholds and significant amount of autonomy to reflect the knowledge that he's gained over 20 years, not only in football, but in this particular market in France, which is experience that I don't have. So as far as decision-making, I think he's more serious about the budget than I am. He knows how to run a business like this. And so a lot of these levers, he wanted to make sure he had the flexibility to continue to run this as successfully as he's been able to do in the past. So I think he's quite comfortable with his level of autonomy.
Pardon. Bonjour, Monsieur Textor. Christian.
Good afternoon. Hi, Mr. Textor. I'm Christian Lanier from Le Progrès in Lyon. You know that Olympique Lyonnais. Here you probably follow. The team hasn't won a major title since 2012 for men. So what can you guarantee to the fans for those who are complaining a bit? And what would be your ambition and your midterm ambition to go and get these titles? Thank you.
I guess my first suggestion would be that they should definitely start watching the women immediately. I'm kidding. Well, look, I said something really stupid down in Brazil right after we bought Botafogo. The team was playing in the second divisions, considerably more difficult recent past at Botafogo, not having won anything for a couple of decades. And I announced that we were going to kick Flamengo's, posterior, which was a dumb thing to say because it gets everybody, just all excited. And turns out, next time we played and we beat them. I believe in dreaming with your eyes wide open. It's an expression that I learned a number of years ago in the visual effects business. It's important to dream. We all want championships. We really, really, really want championships. Jean-Michel wants to get back to Europe and win in Europe. I think anything's possible. I want to win this league. I don't like these models like PSG. It's a great team, whatever, great athletes. We all love to watch them. But, I think over the next few years, we want to go after them. We want to win titles here. We want to win in Europe. Everybody should dream of winning a championship. And I think a balance of capital, a balance of collaboration across the globe. I think new models of making money that I bring. I'm in the technology-driven consumer app space where the audience is engaged, valuable, scalable. Well, in football, what every football club has wrong, their business models are television tickets and merchandise, and the audience and what they do every day. The audience is always more valuable than the club. So I hope to continue to support Jean-Michel as he runs a football club, as he runs a global sport and entertainment business. But I'd like to bring new models of making money to this very large audience that we have here. And as long as this sport is about money, we've got to access capital, we've got to increase revenues, we've got to do it very profitably. We have augmented reality apps that allow you to scan a face and see what you look like in different shades of makeup. And one of those apps will make $30 million in 8 weeks. And that's more than a mid-table club makes in the Premier League all year. So if we can continue to grow on what Jean-Michel's built, which is this great balance between sport and entertainment and increasingly technology, then we can have as much capital at play in our football club as the Emir of Qatar. And hopefully he just wakes up tomorrow and decides not to spend as much. But we're here to win championships. That's what the fans want. As I said, dream with your eyes wide open. But you got to dream, and we have to go for it.
Bonsoir. François Tixier, l'agence France Presse.
Good afternoon, François Tixier, AFP. I've got a more financial question. Although we've got a little bit of information in the press release, how much are you going to invest in the capital? What's the global investment? And eventually, what will be your level of participation around the table?
That question was to me?
Yeah.
Oh. It said, how much are we going to invest in the club as compared to the acquisition of the interest in the club? Well, number one, he asked for 86 million euros because of budgeted items that were largely focused on the squad. A little bit of, equitizing debt, but a significant investment in the squad this year. That's a question for Jean-Michel. It truly is. As far as accessing capital more broadly, that's the nice thing about being part of a larger group. Capital is really not a challenge for us. I think it's one of the reasons that we were able to convince the sellers who cared very much about who they sold to and Jean-Michel that we should be the right buyer. So if Jean-Michel comes with a need, we're there to support him. Thus far, his ask was for 86 million euros. Keep in mind, it's already a very profitable club. It's got money coming from a lot of different directions. It also has new cash flow coming from the recent television deal. So there's a surplus that grows over the course of the next couple of years. So the club's on really sound footing. But if he comes to us and says, hey, we'd like to charge next year, we'd like to invest more heavily, we'd like to stretch on players or on something else, we're there to support him. Given the size of our shareholder interest, that would be our intent.
Bonjour, Romain Aran, la chaîne L'Équipe. Une question pour
Good afternoon, I'm from L'Équipe TV, L'Équipe channel. So a question for you, John Textor. Does your arrival question the arrival of Peter Bosz? In other words, will he be the next year's coach?
I don't make coaching decisions. I just don't. It's not even anything I would think of. That's about the only way I can answer that. I don't mean to give you a short answer or be glib, but it's the farthest thing from my mind as to what decisions he needs to make on a coach. That's Jean-Michel's call.
Je réponds oui.
My answer is yes.
Bonjour,
Jean-Michel.
Monsieur Textor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Textor.
I won't even say yes. If I say yes, then they'll think I have something to do with it. I don't. But I'll be right there singing songs when the coach does well. We have a song at Crystal Palace. It's We've Got a Super Pat Vieira. He's a good Frenchman. So I hope to be singing that song for the Lyon coach as well.
Bonjour, Monsieur Textor, Monsieur Aulas.
Good afternoon, Mr. Textor, Mr. Aulas. You said it, Mr. Textor. The audience is always more important than the club, so they're really excited about the project. And that's back to the DNA of OL. So, to what extent will this be compatible to your arrival? So that's for you, John, but also for Jean-Michel.
I heard the context of the question, but I didn't understand exactly the question.
Je vais essayer de compléter parce que moi je l'ai comprise. Bon, on a beaucoup parlé.
I'm going to elaborate on this because I've understood it. We've talked a lot about our ambition and the resources that we would implement to get back to the heights of our championship in next year for Europe. It started from a project that was designed back to the DNA of the club, relying on training. And we've worked on this over the last months, and we've worked together on this with Vincent and Bruno, and this was concretely converted by a certain number of announcements with all the pillars in the team, with Anthony as a goalkeeper, Kiba as a central defender, Maxence in the middle, Alexandre
colonne vertébrale de cette équipe. Et on va continuer. Il y a eu des signatures de jeunes. Je vais revenir sur toutes celles qui sont intervenues.
We've also signed new deals with young players, and we are very much negotiating with Ryan Cherki for the commitments that he has expressed. So as John said, training is crucial, and we're going to carry on with what we had started before John's arrival, not because he's not interested in this, but because he agrees with the decisions that we've made.
No, that's correct. Yeah, no, that's certainly correct. Yeah, and again, I'm here as a resource, but I always like to think sort of 2 to 5 years out, not tomorrow. That's why when you have a strong chairman, CEO format, as we have at this club, as we have at others, I have the luxury of thinking 2 and 5 years out. And what I see 2 and 5 years out, I see an incredible thing happening in Brazil right now that can benefit this club, because this club is already plugged into Brazil. But there's a reawakening. There's a law that was passed. I'm not sure everybody knows that in the last year, that allows these social clubs to convert the football side of their businesses into corporations and bring in capital. And we've seen the social model run sideways in other parts of the world. If you give a politician capital, they're going to spend it to get reelected. And that's why so many of these clubs and so many of these countries end up racking up huge debts and going bankrupt. And in Brazil, the government came in and did something about it, and now you've got capital going into Brazil. I think I'm one of the first owners to take advantage of this law. Ronaldo with Cruzeiro, I think was actually before me. 777 partners with Vasco da Gama. I hear Manchester City might be buying a club. So capital is now pouring into Brazil, which has been one of the greatest sources of talent for the world of football for many years. But as the clubs have started to struggle and the academies have become less and less the focus of investment down in Brazil, we've really sort of fractured the pipeline of players from Brazil to the rest of the world. So I think that relationship is going to be really important for this particular club, and it has to be two-way. You know, what the people at Botafogo expect is that, you know, clubs in England that I might be affiliated with will consider Botafogo as a place to develop players, to send players both ways. I think there are players that we might be developing in this environment that would benefit by being down in that environment. But 2 to 5 years from now, if Botafogo becomes the best developer and identifier of talent in Brazil, players that want to get to Europe, I mean, they would dream of coming to a place like this. Now, of course, at Botafogo, we want them to stay and compete and help us win there too. But talent in football is a lot like water. It flows where it will. And if we can develop a pipeline that's two-way between Europe and Brazil, I think it really gets down to that idea. There are 11 players on a pitch. If you augment that starting 11 with 2 spectacular players, that's a huge difference to a team of 11. Well, what if you do it by 2 and by 4, year over year for years to come? You combine capital with talent identification. These are the things that I want to think about 2 to 5 years from now. And I hate to say I'm not thinking at all about the current roster, but again, it's just not going to be something that I meddle with.
Bonjour, Arnaud Clément, Le Progrès.
Good afternoon, Arnaud Clément from Le Progrès, a newspaper. There's an economic model that's really prolific here, but since the takeover announcement, a lot of people are worried about the LBO takeover. Is it the case here? Could you confirm that or not?
About the LBO?
Mm-hmm.
There's no LBO. I'm sorry?
Leverage buyout, but it's not the truth.
Yeah, no, I hate debt. I have no debt in my life. The failure I talked about a number of years ago had a little bit of debt, and it was a horrible idea then. It's just as bad of an idea now. I think the reason there's some confusion is that when you're in a process with an investment bank and you find out that something incredible is available, like the shares in this club, you have to mobilize very quickly just to get onto the short list of people considered to be on the short list so you can come meet with Jean-Michel, you can meet with the board and the shareholders. So the way we chose to do that, because we've got significant personal capital strength, myself, Jamie Salter certainly, Bill Foley, we all individually have the capacity to have done everything here in equity. But when somebody calls you and says, hey, do you want to bid on this? You need proof of funds and you need it in 10 days. You go to financial institutions that know who you are, that know you've got the assets and the capital to pay for it, and you get them to deliver a line of credit and bank guarantees that show that you have the money to close. And in this case, that number had to not only cover the share purchase, it had to cover, under French law, the mandatory tender offer, which gives every other shareholder in this company an opportunity to participate on the same terms. So this is not a leveraged buyout. This was a line of credit that was arranged against our own assets to make sure everybody knew here that we had the money to close. And I think Jean-Michel referred to that. It's one of the reasons that we became a finalist. But Kanai Holdings, that provided that line of credit, they're not a lender. They're a publicly traded investment fund that invests in the equity. Bill Foley in particular is an extremely well-to-do man, Jamie Salter as well, and I've done okay. But no, we don't like debt, and we're buying these shares, and if we finance it against our personal assets, that's not debt that goes onto the club. There's not $1 of debt that we're pushing onto the club as we're buying this club. And a leveraged buyout that you referred to is exactly that. It's where you borrow against the club that you're buying. And that's not happening, not even to $1, a euro, or a French franc.
Monsieur Textor, bonjour. Edouard
Bonjour.
Textor. Good afternoon, RMC Sport and BFM Lyon. Welcome to Lyon. I wanted to ask you a question. So the club states that we can beat. So what's your sporting recipe? And you were talking about multi-clubs. What's the synergy that you're going to implement between this synergy between all the clubs that you're going to own?
Well, the word synergy that you're referring to, that's tempting, right? Where, well, let's try and save some money building a global scouting department. Let's try and save some money by having marketing and sponsorship fall under one roof. That's not really the design of Eagle Football. I think that there are best practices that you might see in one club that you can share with another. There certainly might be some conversations that happen where a sponsorship deal or a revenue deal for one club can be extended to another for the benefit of that other club. But when you get into the football department, it's very difficult to tell a sporting director and a manager in one country, we need you to play this particular player because he's of strategic value to the organization. So I don't think forcing synergies and forcing collaboration is a good idea. I do think it's just going to happen somewhat organically. At the fan level, it's just fun, right? People are going to start wearing, Lyon jerseys all over the world now because we've got a global footprint of clubs, and we also have great distribution partners like Jamie Salter at Authentic Brands Group. If you go to his website and see how many brands he owns and, the 10,000 stores that carry their merchandise, maybe those are sort of cool synergies that happen because of the relationship with Eagle Football. But don't expect to see these clubs coming together in any meaningful operating overlap. On players, it's going to happen on players all the time. Players blowing up in Brazil and somebody here wants to talk to him, that conversation can happen if Botafogo is ready to lose him. And vice versa. We've sent so far down to Brazil, most of the traffic has been going into Brazil to strengthen that team as we're trying to compete for a championship there. But the player cooperation will happen organically over time. I don't expect it to be too forced.
Bonjour.
Et concernant votre recette.
And just to elaborate on this, concerning your recipe to beat the state clubs on the long haul, you were mentioning PSG earlier. What's your strategy?
I don't have a strategy for that other than add more players, find them, develop them, buy them if you have to. I don't know, at Everton, the fans will wake visiting teams up in the middle of the night with firecrackers, try anything. I think what's interesting about these big clubs, like in the Premier League, I think it was really cool to see Crystal Palace go up and beat Manchester City at their place. Like, on a given day, you're not really that far off. When you're where Olympique Lyonnais is, like today, you're just not that far off from the top. Consistently, day in, day out, you are, because they manage to win, and in points accumulation, it's very difficult. So the first thing you do is you try and get better. You try and bring in, I hate talking about bringing in players because I think it's great to challenge the players you have to be better. But naturally, of course, if they don't rise to the challenge, you bring in more players. And so I think you should start by trying to have those great special moments where you start nicking away and you start beating your bigger rivals from time to time with more frequency. And then over time, 2, 3, 5 years from now, I don't know what the recipe is, but it's a combination of capital and global talent identification. And as I said, if we can find 11 players that you can't buy because they're in our family of clubs, maybe that's part of the recipe. But if I had it, I don't know.
On va prendre la dernière question, je pense.
All right, last question.
Bonjour, Président Aulas. J'avais une question.
Good afternoon, President Aulas. I had a question. Is to you the arrival of John Textor something that will help you compete with Paris Saint-Germain? Will we expect the Mercato high-end mercato with a lot of money, and you were saying that the 86 million will be dedicated to mercato. No, that's not the case. We cannot be the most fierce opponent to Paris Saint-Germain, but we are, changing dimension here. Last but one season, we were the autumn, the fall champions, but we've changed our strategy in order to recruit players, and in terms of building the team, and in terms of mindset. And of course, we're going to compete with PSG and other teams as soon as possible. But our strategy is to get as high as possible in the championship, and as John mentioned, in Europe, because you know that this is one of the things that I really want to achieve, and I've been wanting to do that over the last years, and we've seen that on Sunday. There've been great moments. The youngest amongst you can't remember that, but we're going to try and get back to that level of performance. But we're not that far off. Although we've lacked 1 or 2 points to get to the European stage, maybe the one that was taken off from us against Marseille. But next year, with the current recruitment, we'll probably be closer to the highest level of the championship, and we'll see whether it be against Paris Saint-Germain. We don't know. Good evening, Christophe Saint-Germain. Bernard Lacombe says that you're going to be here for 10 more years. Maybe he exaggerates a little bit. What's your agenda for your retirement? Well, this is something that we've talked about at the beginning. I committed for 3 more years with John. And then after that, well, you probably know I'm not going to come back to how old I am. It requires a lot of sacrifice, a lot of work, a lot of fatigue. And, I do a lot of different things to the side. So for now on, the minimum deal is 3 years, and then we'll meet again so that I can inform you about the future. All right, well, thank you very much. I'm just going to...
Can I close with one thing? I've only been here 1 day, and I already have to apologize to Jean-Michel, because he's answering questions about beating PSG, and that was not the message of today's conference. But anyway, I do want to. I'll make sure not to promise so high next time, but I'd like you to stay for a very, very long time, whether or not you end up beating PSG repeatedly in the next few years. I'm very appreciative for being here. I do want to thank Jean-Michel. He had a very tough decision to make with a lot of people that really, really loved the idea of being involved with this club. It is such an incredible honor to have been chosen by the shareholders. Even though shareholders that were selling it cannot tell you how important it was to them to find a good partner for this club. And I hope that they sense that I really do have a great love of football, and maybe that's, and my love for community-inspired organizations, maybe that made the difference. But Jean-Michel, I want to thank you for deciding to become my partner here, and I promise to make fewer and fewer big promises in a public room like this next time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Je vais remettre oui, vous pouvez applaudir le maillot.
All right, well, you can give him a round of applause. I'm officially going to give you this jersey. John 22.
Merci beaucoup.
It's good.
All right, thank you very much.
Ah, vous voulez faire pour les télé, pardon. Yes, for the TV.
This way?
No, with Textor.
No. With this?
Yeah.
Do you want it either way? You want it either way?
Thank you.
Thank you, merci.
Je crois qu'il y a un pot à la sortie pour ceux qui ont soif.
I think there's...
Avec,
think there's a drink organized outside if you want.
Et le COMEX.
And then we'll be with Karen with the trustees and the executive committee.